In today's video, I'm going to be building this giant picture frame. This is the largest frame that I've ever built for a single picture. It's 32 inches wide by 96 inches long. We have back banding, we have inside molding that we're going to make for it, and then we're going to put the finish on it. And also we're using a French cleat to hang it because it is so heavy. Alright guys, let's get started. I'll get started by cutting the backer for the picture to the exact same size. This way I'll know exactly how much I need to make the dimensions of the frame around it. Now I could use my sliding table saw for this, but because it's such an oversized piece, I think it would be easier to just throw it on the floor, do it with the track saw, cut it to length and width, and then trim everything up later on. Once I have the backer cut, I can move over to the joiner and I can start to mill up some of the pieces that I'm going to need for the back banding and the frame. Once I have one flat face and then another face is 90 degrees to that flat face and I have a 90-degree angle, I can switch this joiner planer combination into planer mode, and then I can plane the piece down to make everything S4S. Once all the pieces are milled up, and they've been drying in my shop for about 2 years, so I know that the moisture content's down below 10%. But now I'm over to the sliding table saw, which is definitely my favorite tool in the shop. It's the heart of my shop. Everything that I do basically revolves around this machine right here. So I'm just going to cut all the boards right now to rough length and width, and then we're going to start roughing everything out around the backer so that we can plan out where we need the miters. One of my favorite features of a sliding table saw is the ability to rip a straight line without even holding onto the workpiece with just some simple shop-made clamps and an actual clamp that was made for this particular table saw. Once I get a straight line ripped on here, which makes me avoid having to use the joiner to make the straight line, I can just unclamp it and then run it up against the rip fence, and I have a completely parallel piece, perfect to the width that I need. Now I'll need to cut a rabbet on the inside of all the pieces of the mitered part of the frame. That's going to allow me to make the backer and the picture sit inside of the frame to support it and also hide the edges. So what I'm doing is running a groove on the table saw through the workpiece about 3/8 of an inch high, and then I'm going to switch it on its side and raise the blade to that line. This way I can complete the rabbet. Now sometimes I like to do this on the table saw, and sometimes I like to do it with a router. You can use a rabbeting bit in a router and it's just as quick, but you have to do the setup on the router. Here I just have to raise and lower the blade and move my rip fence. It takes a couple of seconds. The most important thing when doing this on the table saw is to make sure that your cutaway falls away from the blade. You don't want to trap it between the blade and the rip fence. If you position it on the other side, it could bind and that could spell trouble. Once all the rabbets are cut, I'm going to bring it over to the backer and I'm going to put it with the rabbet side down against the backer, just the way it's going to sit, kind of cradled in there. I'm going to get it to the ends. I'm going to use the 45 side of the combination square, and I'm just going to strike a line right where that point meets, so I know that's exactly where I need to make my mitered cuts. I set my table saw crosscut fence to 45 degrees to the blade. Now, you don't have to use a table saw to do this. You can absolutely do this whole part of the project on the miter saw. As soon as I have two of the miters cut for one of the corners, I'm going to clamp them together in place up against the backer, and then I'm going to run down to the other side and I'm going to make a mark, and that's going to give me the exact length that I need, and there'll be no guesswork, no measuring. Now here's an important tip when making any size picture frame. You want to set up a stop block for repetitive cuts so that all your pieces are the same size. If you're making a rectangular one, then you have to set up a stop block for the upper and lower part of the frame, and then you need to set a separate stop block for the shorter pieces, which would be the sides. Now, if you don't do that and you're just trying to cut off your pencil line, then you're definitely going to be out of square. After I put all the pieces together and clamp them in place, I like to label them so that I know which mitered corners are going to go together as far as the grain pattern to keep it uniform. Now I'm cutting some strips of scrapped 3/4 inch plywood, and the reason I'm doing this is because the back of the frame is going to have a French cleat on it, and since the French cleat is 3/4 of an inch, I need to push back the whole frame 3/4 of an inch so that it's even when it sits on the wall. So there's two things that are going to be good here for the French cleat. Number one, these blocks that I'm cutting right now are going to go in each one of the corners. That's going to make the miters stronger, so I can hold the joints together with just one pocket screw and glue, and then I'm going to put these L brackets on there, and it's going to not only give me the 3/4 depth that I need, but it's also going to be screwed to both parts of the frame, and that'll make the miter stronger than even needing a spline.
Okay, now my normal method to join miters together would be with dominoes and glue only. But since this is going to be so heavy, this frame, and it's going to be hung with a French cleat, and I made these corner blocks, what I'm going to do is pocket screw them together with glue, and then the corner blocks will be screwed in this way, attaching each piece permanently as another mechanical bond, and then these will also give me the exact depth that I need for the back banding, and that'll hide the French cleat as well as the blocks.
Now the main part, or the flat part of the mitered frame, is together and sitting in the garage drying up. I've tilted my blade to 45 degrees and I'm cutting the back banding. Now again, you can do this on your miter saw. All you need to do is stand the piece upright, turn the blade to 45 and make the cut downwards, and then you'll get the bevel you need.
So I have the pieces for the back banding cut. Now I think the best way to go around and do this, to glue it together, is to use these miter spring clamps. I'll put a link in the description for these. I'm going to use some quick and thick glue, and what I'm going to do is apply glue to both miters. I'm going to put the clamps on, and then I'm going to pin it in place from the top. I'm going to go around and do this to all four sides, and then we're going to move it off to the side. We'll do a pre-sanding, and then we'll assemble everything.
Now since I have to attach the back banding level with the French cleats, I'm going to cut those now with the table saw. I have my blade beveled to 45 degrees, and a French cleat is nothing more than a basic hook system. And what you do is cut a 45 on one piece, then a 45 degree on the other piece, and then one goes against the wall with the hook facing out. The other piece gets attached to the frame, and then it drops in and they hook on each other, and that's it.
Now I have to nail on the pieces of the French cleat. So I've just marked 6.5 inches from each end. And I want to make sure that I'm keeping them as close to flush as possible when I screw them in. And the only way to make sure that I'm able to do that without it sliding around is to put a pin nail in. Because once I put the glue on the back of this and I put it in here, it's going to want to slide around once I start to drill into it. Okay, so I'm anticipating this to be the hardest part. Right now I have the brad gun set up with 1¼ inch nails, and I need to run a bead of glue all around the frame because, as you can see, I slipped the back banding over the frame so that I can just lift it into place. And once I get it flush on one corner, because I'm going to start on one side and work my way around corner to corner, and then come back, flush everything up, and nail it all along, and then I'll have to fill the holes and sand it down, and so on.
Now, there's two ways you can do this. I made the mistake, I think, of making it all one piece, the back banding, as a big frame, because it's just harder to handle when it's this size. Now, if you were making a smaller frame, that would be fine. But I think if I was to do this again, what I would have to do was cut each piece of the back banding, and then I would bring it up to the workpiece, nail it on one at a time, just because I think it would be a lot easier. It'd be less involved. Now I'm going to make the molding for inside to go against the back banding. It's going to create a nice reveal. So I've milled down some stock to a 1/2 inch, and now I'm running it through the router table. And I'm using an OG bit just to create a simple profile. Now you could do this on the table saw as well, but these are small moldings, and I like to break out the miter saw for this, and this way I could just make a quick changeover and switch the blade back and forth to 45 degrees with a simple swing of the arm. Now a little bit of glue and some 23 gauge pin nails, and we're starting to wrap this thing up. Now the client wanted a nice dark walnut stain, so that's what I'm using here, and I really think it looks great. It really highlights the grain. You'll see in the up close pictures, the grain really like turns black and pops on red oak. And now it's time to spray some finish. I really love spraying with this Fuji sprayer. It's just a dream come true. I'm actually glad that my other one kicked the bucket on me, because the fine mist that this thing puts out is just absolutely incredible. I almost don't even have to sand between coats. So I'm giving it 3 coats of a waterborne lacquer. I'll link it in the description. It's General Finishes.
Okay guys, so here it is with 3 coats of the finish on it. And this just really came out amazing. Look at the sheen on this. The miters are perfect. When you use a satin, this is a water-based lacquer. As I said, I'll put it in the description. This is General Finishes. I love using this because it dries so quickly. Alright, now all we got to do is flip it over and put the picture in. This is by far the largest picture frame for a single picture that I have ever made. Okay, so now I have the picture attached to the backer, and now it's time to just drop it in place into the frame. Okay, inside there, we're in there, and now all I have left to do is put the backing braces in place, screw them in to hold it down. Okay, all the pieces are secure. I can flip it over now, and you can see the size of this frame with the poster in it. Oh boy. Okay guys, well this is massive. This is the largest picture frame ever, and I'm glad to be done with it because it was a little hard to manipulate and get everything done by myself. I am a solo shop, so this is going to be hung with a French cleat inside of business. It's not for someone's home. They would have to have a pretty big open wall really to, to hang this on there and not have it take up the whole room. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. 3 coats of the finish. I'm going to link all the tools in the description below the video, so check that description box if you're interested in purchasing any of those tools. Also, thank you for joining me in the shop, and if you haven't already, hit the like and subscribe button and leave a comment if you like the frame. And also, if you want to support the channel and you're enjoying all the free content, then definitely visit the Teespring store. The link is also in the description. Pick up a t-shirt. Alright guys, I want to thank you all for joining me. I'll see you in the next video. I hope you had fun.